Transitions, engaging your reader. So what is a transition? It's the last sentence or paragraph of a chapter, a page that creates a seamless flow from one chapter to the next. It really is meant to help your reader to want to turn the page. Like, we'll talk about that in the next chapter. Or, are you guys ready to dive in? Let's get started. Things like that. So a transition makes your reader want to turn the page. A transition can be literal or just intriguing enough to compel the reader to keep on going. There are different types of transition. The first one is called bridge the connection. This brings a logical connection between the current chapter and the next. Example, we all know that eating healthy is fundamental to restoring health. However, food alone isn't the whole picture. In the next chapter, we will explore the critical role of movement. So that is bridge the connection. It's logical, it makes sense, and hopefully it's going to make them want to turn the page to find out how to do this. Now, I also want to mention, I'm talking about chapters, but there can be transitions within a chapter. If you have two different thoughts maybe going on, it might be, you want to transition from one paragraph to the next, or like a section sort of within your chapter. There can be transitions there. I'm not going to really go over that, but it's the same concept. All right, number 2 is posing a question or a hint. This can spark curiosity in your reader. Maybe asking them a question that they're like, I don't know, and they have to turn the page to find out. Or you give them some sort of a hint of what's to come. So an example would be, you have seen how vital sleep is to your health. What if you struggle to get the proper rest your body craves? Would you like to improve your sleep quality starting tonight? I would be the first to raise my hand on that one. But okay, well, how do I do it? If I want to find out how to do it, I'm going to have to keep turning the page to get the answer. Number 3 is to summarize key points. You may want to briefly, and it should be briefly, summarize some key points that you just mentioned in the chapter to help tie into the next chapter. For example, now that you better understand the impact stress has on your body, you are ready to learn practical techniques to reduce stress and promote healing. So you just kind of briefly summarize that you just talked about the impact of stress, and the next chapter is going to take it further now. Number 4 is emotional connection. You can motivate your reader by, again, tapping into their emotions, such as hope, urgency, excitement, their pain point. And an example of this is, by reading this chapter, you have taken the first step to improving your health. Imagine the potential for improved health once you implement the habits taught in the next section. Are you ready to get started? So you see how it's taking your reader, it's pushing them to turn the page so that they can take that next step. Number 5 is telling a story. Start a story that will be finished in the next chapter. This is, especially if it's a really compelling story. Sometimes people will start a story at the beginning of a book and then not tell it the end of the story until the end of the book. There's different ways of using stories like that as well. But an example would be, when Tina shifted her mindset about food, she was amazed at how one simple morning routine was so transformational. In the next chapter, I will share what she did and how you can apply it. Here's a little story that Tina did this morning routine and it just changed her life. Well, what is it? I want to do it, You got to turn the page. Number 6 is a cliffhanger or open loop. You leave your reader hanging out there. There's a question in their mind. What's the outcome? What happens? And that's kind of with the story. Well, what happened? It's a cliffhanger. Or an open loop. For example, as I implemented these changes, my energy level improved greatly. But there was still one thing threatening my health that I needed to get control of. Keep reading to learn what this vital change was and why it is so important. you're kind of leaving them hanging. Like there's this one thing, I did all these other things and things were great, but there was still one thing that was needing to be changed. You got to turn the page to find out. Number 7, recall the chapter's purpose. Summarize the purpose within the chapter and how the next chapter is going to build on it. For example, the groundwork has been laid in this chapter to help you understand the root causes of your fatigue. In the next chapter, you will learn how to take steps to improve your environment that may be making you sick. So you're hinting around that, this chapter talked about root causes of fatigue, but how do you overcome that? And so the next chapter is going to tell you that there could be environmental causes that are making you fatigued. That's giving you a summary or a recall of the chapter's purpose. Number 8 is conversational tone. Sometimes a transition that's a bit more conversational or personal is appropriate for a particular chapter. For example, whew, that was a lot to take in, wasn't it? Don't let it overwhelm you. This doesn't all need to be implemented right away. Easing in with small changes can make a big impact. Next, let's look at some easy to implement steps. So you might have just given them, hit them in the face, so to speak, with all these different things. But okay, now you're going to start breaking it down. What's the very first thing that they can do to see some improvement? And so this was a little bit more of a conversational, I understand you might be feeling overwhelmed right now, but don't worry, I'm going to just break this down into small steps that you can implement. So keep in mind that the type of transition you choose to use, it should feel natural for your topic, for the one chapter going to the next. What's the content in that chapter? You want to be able to transition, and that's where also when you lay your book out, when you're doing your self-editing, knowing which chapter to put next so that your book flows better is also very important. And so transitioning from one chapter to the next, you want to make sure that content connects and it feels natural to transition to that next chapter. Your action steps are to just be mindful of your transitions. How are you getting your reader to go from one chapter to the next? But don't spend too much time stressing over these transitions as you're writing, because you can fine-tune that when you go through your self-editing stage. If transitions are new to you, share in the Facebook group your thoughts on it. How's it going? Once you start writing, maybe you may not be ready to do that right now, but once you start writing, how's it feel to use a transition? Sometimes we use them naturally and don't realize that we're using them, or that it's called a transition, but that's something that you're going to want to be conscious of, especially in your self-editing stage, to make sure you're transitioning real well from one chapter to the next.